Okay, so I was thinking to myself, what is it about socialism and liberalism that's so seductive? The ideas kind of suck people in, and once people are immersed in that way of thinking, they stop thinking things through, they lose all common sense, and they almost get quite hysterical. So I've thought about three things which I think contribute to them. One is something to do with the education system. Two is phenomenon like Harry Potter. And three is this whole new age positive thinking lark. So the first thing I thought is, when it comes to education, how often have you seen on social media or often discussed on radio where they say things like, well, maths isn't important, subjects like drama are very important because no one ever uses maths afterwards, whereas drama teaches children confidence and creativity and it brings them out of their shell, etc., etc. So while I'm very big, I love drama and art and music when I was at school. I think everyone does. And yes, there are very many benefits. But at the same time, it's really essential for children to do things that require logic and objective reasoning, like, maths, the sciences, also geography to an extent, even languages, because there is a right or a wrong. So for example, you go and do a maths exam. It doesn't matter if your maths teacher hates your guts. If you get 100% in that exam, you are still going to get 100% because there's no subjectivity. It's either right or wrong. Whereas in other subjects like music and drama, no matter how wonderful your performance is, it really boils down to the teacher, whether they like you, their subconscious feelings about you and their interpretation of your work, to how well you're going to do. So it's very important that children continue to do these subjects that have an objective measurement, where there is a definite right or wrong, where it doesn't boil down to your emotional or your feeling or your perceptions or how you interpreted something. There must be objectivity. When you watch legal trials, the advocates, the attorneys will always come out and they'll tell the jury, look at the objective facts, like the phone records or the DNA, the blood evidence, the forensic evidence. They try and steer juries away from getting involved into the whole drama and the emotions and the upset of the court case. You must have objectivity. So yes, I think that, if children are going to be steered to do more of these artsy, subjective subjects at both school and university, then later in their life, that's how they're going to be influenced. They're going to forget critical reasoning as a way of thinking things through and working out, yes, some things sound very good. Emotionally, they may appeal to you. They may feel just, they may feel reasonable, but can you think those things through stage by stage? And I think you've seen with all these liberals, no, they can't. The next thing, Harry Potter, the massive phenomenon. Now, first, I'm going to say I'm not a fan. I don't read it. I don't do wizards, pixies, gnomes, elves, mermaids, dragons. I just don't do any of that. It's not my scene. Cannot stand it. I don't do animation either. I like reality. I think I went straight from sort of Noddy to Nancy Drew to Robert Ludlum, maybe with a bit of the famous five, but I like real characters, not that sort of thing. So that fantasy genre isn't my thing, but I'm very well aware of what's in there. So I thought, isn't it strange that the most successful author of modern times, probably of all time almost, is J.K. Rowling? Certainly she's right up there, isn't she? And isn't it funny that she's totally on message? She hates Trump, she's against Brexit, she's with the whole cultural Marxist politically correct agenda. She's fully on board, fully signed up to everything. Her tweets are totally predictable. Isn't it also strange that the most world-renowned, the most brilliant ever, the most fantastic scientist, Stephen Hawking, before he passed, was also on board with, he's pro-Hillary, he's pro-Remain, he's all with the same thing. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the establishment just luck out that these very famous, world-renowned people just happened to be bang on message and that suits them? Or was it that these people were promoted and partially became successful because they were on message? So I know quite a bit about publishing. I've written 3 novels. I've tried to get them, published with a big publisher. And I know loads of other authors, both published and self-published, and the journeys they've taken. So I've talked over the time to agents, publishers, and whatever. And I was trying to resolve this question. What do publishers want? Like that film, What Women Want. What do publishers want? What do agents want? And it wasn't just a case of, well, I was desperate to be published. Well, I'm not that worried about it anymore anyway. But I was curious, what do they want? So it's 3 things, really. One of them is they want people with a name, like, say, Jordan Katie Price, because they know all her fans are going to buy the book. Second thing they said to me is write a novel that's very similar to a bestseller. And you can see that that works with TV. Hey, they find one show like Strictly it's successful, then there's a dancing version, a skating version. Then they have a bake-off, and then there's a similar cooking version. You know, everything successful has loads of spin-offs or very similar versions, and they do the same with books. But the other way to get published is to write something that suits a narrative that the establishment are trying to push. And I feel that maybe the whole thing with the wizards and the genre of Harry Potter encompassed something that they knew would have an influence on not only children but adults through a generation and maybe mold their thinking. So what I'm thinking is I know that the books are heavy on both occult and almost Masonic symbolism. Now, when you go back, they say that they think now that Shakespeare was not just written by him. His works were a collaboration. Like with series like Friends, for example, the big sitcoms, it's always a collaborative effect. They have big writing teams. It's not just one person. It's highly likely there was more input into the Harry Potter books than just the one person. And I think there were people who knew a lot about the occult and Masonic symbolism. Now, why symbols are so massively important, and this is talked about in astrology, but if you go back over archaeology, ancient Egypt, the ancient Sumerians, for eons, the elites, hi there, and the people in the know knew that symbols have a powerful effect on the mind. When you see a symbol, it almost opens a portal into the subconscious. And it's a way of subliminally influencing people, because people are looking at symbols. Their conscious mind doesn't understand them. Their subconscious does. Harry Potter is full with symbols. And I think they were speaking to people's subconscious and almost maybe prepping their minds to be more malleable, or to be more, should we say, adaptable to certain or acceptable to certain concepts. So maybe it was a way of molding a generation of young adults and children to be more susceptible to liberal socialist brainwashing. So let's talk about something more specific. The books are totally devoid of a kind of religious thing. Your success in Harry Potter is all about whether you know the spells, have access to the right kind of magic, and know how to use it. There's no sense of a higher power. There's no kind of humbling experience where you step back and acknowledge that you are weak and you're insignificant, and you pray to God for strength and power, and where you see yourself as a big part of a big scheme. No, you are all important. You can change your future. You have the power. It's rather selfish. It's rather narcissistic. It's all about knowing the right spells. Also in the Harry Potter books, people are either good or bad, and there's no progression. Whereas Christianity says everyone is a sinner. It's not telling you there are slightly better people, slightly worse people. No, it tells you you're all sinners. And in that, there's a lot of equality, because whether you're a Christian or a non-believer, you're all a sinner, and your path to salvation or to heaven is through asking for forgiveness and repentance and whatever. And again, there's something humbling. There's something about you taking a step back and realizing that you are not all important. Your needs, your wishes are not all important. You are part of a bigger system, and there's something higher to answer to, which is something that is not in Harry Potter. In other words, Harry Potter is more like Aleister Crowley. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, because that's what it's kind of telling you. It's all about you having the power. Very similar to positive thinking, in Harry Potter, we also have this thing of it's all in your mind, obstacles, mountains, it's all in your head. You change your thinking, you change reality. So what do we get here again? There's no objective reality. There are no hurdles. It's all your imagination, and you can kind of imagine yourself out of it. So again, we have, no, don't worry, Jonathan, I just did a little bit of editing of it. I don't think they're controversial. No, I try and tread a fine line with that one. I try and be subtle about my more controversial messages. But I think you guys, I mean, I'm obviously broadcasting to a very intelligent audience here, so I don't need to put too fine a point on things. And also, I don't like to be a judgmental old know-it-all like Stefan Molyneux, because I think he goes too far. I think he's quite... yeah, it's like he's perfect. He knows everything. He comes across really judgmental. And I would try not to do that. Obviously, everyone's going to do it a little bit. So then we get to this whole positive thinking lark. And that's all the same as well. It's also telling people you can achieve, you can have it all. It's all in your head. You say these affirmations. And while I think that it's quite obvious that being a positive, go-getting person and having a good mentality and being able to bounce back from defeats with a positive attitude is important, I think it is important also to be humble and to take note of your limitations, and that you obviously need to work through them with common sense, and you can't wish them away. So I think these three things I've discussed are ways in which the thinking of anyone really under 50 has been molded to see the world as either black or white, good people, bad people. Donald Trump is bad, everything he does is bad. The EU is good, everything they do is good. People like Brexiteers, like Jacob Rees-Mogg or Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson, you can use any names against them you like because they're bad people. And you see that so many of them on the left, they feel that once a person has the label bad on them, like someone in Harry Potter might be bad, that you can virtually do anything you like, say anything you like to them, and there are no consequences, there's no comeback. You can feel almost like an intellectual vigilante against that person. And yes, and that obviously will eventually, if it gets out of control, lead to physical violence because those people feel that there's a right or a wrong and not that there is good and bad in everything and everyone. And it's all a matter of perspective and period. I mean, yes. So I do think that these concepts, from the education to the literature that's out there to the positive thinking movement, have geared people's minds in a certain way. It has geared them away from religion, and it's made them more egocentric and more narcissistic in a way as well. So that's just what I wanted to talk about. A couple of the reasons why I think people are so swayed by this liberalism or socialism. It's because everything is about the emotion and the feeling and wanting to be a good person, and objective reality and the analysis of facts, cause and effect, has kind of gone out the window. So I hope you enjoyed that. Just wanted to kind of share that with you. Was there anything else on the Harry Potter thing I was going to say? I don't know. I think enough said about that, the better. Oh yes, I was going to say some children's literature is about seeing an adult world through a child's eyes and through the innocent perspective of a child. But what Harry Potter does is it almost infantilizes adults, where it encourages adults to indulge in childish insecurity, in fears and childish whims and needs, rather than becoming an adult who knows that there are things that have to be dealt with in a logical way. I know often in church services to do with the royals, they've had the reading which includes the phrase, "When I became an adult, I set aside childish things." And I think when you become an adult, you have to kind of be objective and reasonable. And Harry Potter is encouraging adults not to set aside childish things. It's more encouraging them to indulge in a childish world where anything imagined is possible, and where you can allow your kind of feelings and whatever to run rampant. Okay, you can tell me what you thought of all that. I'm putting it out there, food for thought. You may agree, you may not, who knows. Have a good evening, guys.